Saint Martin Annual Regional Trade Show 2025. As we know it this year, SMART 2025. It was such a success. We are overwhelmed with all the registrations from buyers to suppliers. We have over 30 countries represented here and over 166 delegates, buyers and suppliers. That tells you the show is growing. There is great business going on, as you can see here, back-to-back meetings. But it's not only about the meetings. We have made sure that the itinerary involves that the delegates can experience the destination and that they even on the last day go island hopping and meet our neighbors, Ceiba and Anguilla. And it's just an overall experience they're immersing in, doing business, but as well as experiencing what the island has to offer in order for them to, for their clients and to sell packages or if it's online. We've seen also a diverse delegation of suppliers, so not only hotels, but we see more vendors this year. We also see that we have more excursions, experiences, such as boat charters or even suppliers such as products and services. So I would say this was definitely a success and we look forward to 2026.
Hello, my name is Suriñe. I'm from Wetlegs. I came to San Martin again. I think it's the 10th time I'm coming to participate in SMART 2025. I think it's a great days to meet like the new product, to talk to the hotels. They tell us about the new things the island have to offer. And I love San Martin because it's an island where there is so many activities to do, not only great beaches, but you have great food, great activities. You can do like a short excursion to St. Bart's, short excursion to Anguilla. It's like one stop, 3 islands. And San Martin has always something new to offer. It's one of the best options in the Caribbean.
My name is Lisa Houghton, and greetings from SMART 2025. I'm super happy to be here. Day one is exciting if you feel the energy in the room. That makes me really happy for where St. Martin is going this year. We have a phenomenal turnout of vendors, tour operators, wholesalers, restaurants, hotels. So and what I'm doing here is the knowledge-based. So what is your best asset for your company? It's your people. So what SHTA started several years ago was the SHTA Academy. And I've been working with them to work with the people on the island in every sector because everything is hospitality. And work with them with their teams, with their clients, with their clientele. We do corporate, customized training because what's important? Our tourism product. So that's what I'm here for. And there are other islands that are here, Montserrat, I see, Antigua, Barbuda, Barbados, quite a few islands. And I'm really happy after 25 years to see something that I gave birth to with Mei Ling, our director of tourism. Something that we gave birth to, we were reminiscing, has become so strong. I remember traveling island after island with Liat. Thank you, Brian Mead, for the tickets. And encouraging them to come to this event. So I'm really happy to feel the energy and everything that's going on in the room.
Starting with questions from MP Sarah Westcott-Williams. Can we get, using the same comparison mode if available, the numbers dating back approximately 5 years? Through you, Mr. Chair, all State of Education reports dating back to 2011-2012 have been submitted to Parliament over the years. However, I have resubmitted the merged reports for 2015 to 2018, along with the reports for 2018, 2019, 2019, 2020, and the merged 2020-2022 report. This will provide an overview of the education sector's status during that period. Given the large volume of data from this time frame and the current tool used by the inspectorate to compile the information, it's not technically feasible to submit this information at this time. How far are the preparations for the 2023 year report on the state of education? Division Inspection is in the process of making final corrections and additions to the draft State of Education report for the year 2022 to 2023. I anticipate that once it has been completed and I've managed to review and approve it, it will then be provided to Parliament by the end of the second quarter of 2025. Where does the ministry stand right now with the education review? And very specifically, there are approximately 10 general recommendations in the area of educational improvements in that report. Through you, Mr. Chairman, after receiving the initial findings of the interim report of the education review, the Department of Education of MECIS conducted a comparative analysis. The analysis concluded that the two proposed priority areas mentioned in the interim report, strengthening the education system and providing a continuous learning path, aligned well with the ongoing work of the ministry. The Ministry of ECYS budget for 2022, the National Development Vision 2020-2030 and beyond, the Objectives for Education Governing Program 2021-2024, and the MECI Strategic Plan 2016-2026. So, in reviewing the final report of the Education Review, the Department of Education concluded that there was a need for the scope of the plans of action to be broadened to include policy and implementation actions related to improving the quality of education in general. To address this, the Department of Education decided to add a third main area, infrastructure. So the three proposed plans of action are strengthening the system in which education operates, providing a continuous learning path, and infrastructure. A consultant was hired to draft a plan of approach to education review to provide a straightforward roadmap for efficiently executing the recommendations of the education review in a synchronized manner. The plan of approach was presented for decision-making in 2024 and was approved by the Council of Ministers in December 2024. The ministry is collaborating with the TWO to draft plans of action for several projects that will address the recommendations. Next question, is this report and the recommendations in the education report any type of basis for what the ministry is doing in terms of improvements in education? And if that is so, can the minister provide, based on recommendations in that review, an update? As mentioned in the previous response, the recommendations from the education review align well with the plans of the government and the Ministry of ECYS. Therefore, the 10 recommendations are integral to the ministry's ongoing initiatives. The ministry has identified three main areas under which the recommendations are categorized. Strengthening the education system, which addresses recommendations 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10. Providing a continuous learning path, addressing recommendations 2, 3, and 4. And infrastructure, addressing recommendations 1 and 9. All recommendations from the education review are being addressed either through the ministry's ongoing work or in collaboration with the TWO and or the NRPB. The 10 recommendations include establish a reliable and sustainable data registration system for key figures. So to address this, a ministry management information system is being developed in collaboration with the NRPB and TWO. And I believe we just signed off on that. We had that launch yesterday, actually, which is why SG was not present yesterday. Recommendation 2, improve the educational process. So that includes drafting a policy and roadmap for secondary education reformation, conducting research on FBE, which was launched in February 2025, conducting research on CXE CVQs, consultations with stakeholders on the draft report regarding that are ongoing, and research on the return of investment on CAPE, IB, and VWO has been completed, and preliminary work towards drafting a strategy to improve access, efficiency, and effectiveness has begun. Recommendation 3, provide a continuous learning path. So the roadmap for the implementation of the special education policy and the development of the national decree for special education funding has begun. The establishment of the ECD implementation trajectory is ongoing in collaboration with TWO. And to facilitate a smooth transition between education levels, we're working to align the curriculum across all levels and effectively prepare students for tertiary education, which has begun with a focus on the transition to higher education in the Netherlands. 4, enhance the connection between education and the labor market. So the establishment of the Raad van Onderwijs en Arbeid, the ROA, which will facilitate the recognition of training companies, is ongoing. 5, develop a mature governance structure. This includes transforming the division of public education into a public entity, developing a framework for uniform reporting in collaboration with SOAB, which is an ongoing project, establishing an external supervisory system under the Education Supervision Ordinance, which is currently under review for ratification and implementation. 6, ensure up-to-date and adequate legislation. So finalization of the Education Supervision Ordinance and its delegated legislation is ongoing. The ministerial regulation for ROA member profiles is in progress. The Higher Education Ordinance, the funding decree, and related legislation are being finalized. The study financing delegated legislation is in the final phase of ratification. The national decree for the Education Supervision Ordinance and amendments to the Landsbesluitbekostiging onderwijs are ongoing. And a review of the function book for education and compensation all fall under this particular recommendation. Number 7, organize an efficient and transparent budgetary system, so developing multi-annual budgets, which is an exercise that is ongoing. Strengthening financial accountability, so establishing a standardized reporting structure. Supporting school boards with providing audited financial reports as part of their subsidy requirement. And developing a risk management framework for educational facilities, all of which is ongoing. Number 9, guarantee the basic conditions for quality education. So school repairs have been completed. There's an update of teaching materials. Hiring and training the required number of qualified personnel is also required under this recommendation, as well as upgrading ICT facilities in schools and digitizing the education system. And the last recommendation was to analyze efficiencies in the education system in order to establish a more efficient and effective school transportation system, which is ongoing, and reviewing the education funding model, which is also an ongoing project.
To the future of landfill management. The Emergency Debris Management Program is one of the most anticipated and complex projects of the Trust Fund. EDMP, as it's called, began as an initiative to remove boat wrecks from the lagoon following Hurricane Irma. The project moved to suppress fires in the landfill, finally evolving into finding a long-term solution to our landfill and improving our waste management capacities. EDMP is now at a critical phase. This afternoon, we have the honor of visiting the offices of the landfill managers on the front side, working towards concrete collaboration with our neighbors in the north, recognizing the strength in my favorite Sustainable Development Goal, SDG 17, partnerships. The EDMP Express bus then made its way back to the Dutch side, where for a few minutes it became the SMPP Swamp Bus. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to quickly explain SWAMP. This is the government's project to improve sewage capacity by bringing household connections to residents in Dutch cul-de-sac, and forms part of our efforts to enhance quality of life and improve resilience. We then reboarded the renamed EDMP Express and visited the resettlement area, showing the works carried out to demolish and clean up the area immediately around the landfill and the ongoing works to improve how we sort and manage waste. Finally, we arrived here at the entrance of the landfill, many wondering why. While EDMP is without a doubt a technical project, the political steps we take determine its timeline and, most importantly, its success. Today, the Ministry in Vromi, with the support of the Council of Ministers and the assistance of the NRPB, is proud to unveil our first steps to sound financial waste management. Within short, every cost to the landfill will incur an entrance fee of 10 Caribbean guilders. This small fee will contribute to enhancing the government's ability to manage its waste and begin our campaign, It Takes Us All. The slogan speaks to the need to no longer see waste as a government problem, but a collective opportunity. Government recognizes the value of waste, and our collective solutions and expertise is what is needed. Over the past months, the ministry has held discussions with local businesses already involved in paper, plastic, and metal recycling. The focus on waste diversion is critical in ensuring sustainable approach to waste management in our move to creating a cleaner, circular, and more environmentally conscious St. Martin. Within the coming months, we will continue to communicate the implementation plan as we move to the future of waste management.
Minister Gums, Minister of Vromi, Patrice, dear Patrice, I would like to congratulate you and your team with your courage and your guts, because you have set decisive steps. Because to solve the issue of the dump and how to deal with waste on beautiful St. Martin is now or never. We have just a few years left before the trust fund will close. We have still some money left, and we put it in an envelope for the future of the question how to deal with waste. Now we can smell and we can see what it means if a part of the island is not that beautiful. And it's important to set those steps that before your mandate will come to an end and before the trust fund will come to an end, that irrevocable steps have been taken for the future of St. Martin and for the beautification. One important step was make it economic viable in the future, because you can dump some waste somewhere, and then in 30 years' time, well, a new mountain has been arisen at St. Martin. And to ask money to the people of St. Martin before they dump something, then you make people realize that dumping waste is not for free.
That was given to the entity, the casino. Yes, this has already been submitted to Parliament. What is the legislation for standalone casinos or casinos attached to a hotel? The legislation is the same for both types of casino. As explained in my answers to MP Lewis' question, the distinction between the two is that the standalone casinos are not linked to a hotel, whereas our hotel-based casinos are linked to a hotel with at least 200 rooms. How many rooms must be in place to qualify for a license? The government's policy for casino operations as part of the hotel is limited to hotels with at least 200 rooms. If the existing hotel has started with an expansion of its property and room inventory to at least the amount of 200 rooms and a request for a casino license has been filed, the request license can be granted if the necessary financing is in place to complete the expansion, construction has started, at least 65% of the minimum required 200 rooms is completed, and the property is open or has reopened. The application will be given a maximum of 2 years to complete the construction of the additional 35% of the rooms to arrive at a room count of 200. Failure to comply with these conditions can result in the casino's license being revoked. How many rooms does the entity that got the license have, and did they actually qualify? The entity has 133 rooms out of the 200 rooms and therefore qualified. Can we receive the advice given from the department to the minister to grant the license? The advice was shared with Parliament. If there is an intention to build, it could make it possible. So, on what date was the promising note signed off and given? In my press briefing of February 26, 2025, the mention of a promissory note was not made by my person, but rather the reporter that asked the question. My response to said reporter was that the then Minister of TIAD issued a letter to said entity informing them that they have met the requirements for the policy for an issuance of a license to be granted, for the license to be granted. Does the ministry have data to show that 200 rooms has been built in the year? Please share it. The Department of IETA did conduct a count and provide the respective department and my cabinet with said report to ensure that the room count was at 65%. As per the policy mentioned before, only 65% needs to be completed and construction prior to issuing the license within 2 years of said license, the 200 rooms should be completed. What percentage of room does the entity have? Entity has 66% of the rooms, of the 200 rooms required. Can we get an update on the lottery legislation? What is the path of the legislation? The draft national ordinance on games of chance is currently in the final stages of preparation, and the work group is now incorporating feedback provided by Legal Affairs. Way.
Minister, your indulgence as I allow MP Duran to make use of the interruption lectern. MP Duran.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Minister, can I get some clarity because I see a lot of percentages being thrown around, 65, 66. Can we get an exact number as to how much rooms the organization has available? Thank you.
MP is stating that your presentation regarding 65, 66, 70, whatever the case may be, percentage or numbers is not clear, and he detects, and I'm doing this to make sure that what is said at interruption is actually an interruption. So the MP is making an assertion about what you presented, and so MP, I'm making sure that it's not questions, that we don't go there and actually ask questions. So in that light, Minister, if you can respond to clarify that assertion.
Madam Chair, respectfully, through you, I'd like to ask the members of Parliament to please listen, because I did answer the question. I think that's when you were all talking amongst yourselves. If you could just please give me an opportunity to, if you just please listen. As I mentioned earlier, Minister, how many rooms does the entity that got the license have? Did they actually qualify? The entity has 133 rooms, which means it's 66% of the 200 rooms. Therefore, that's how they're qualified. With your indulgence, Madam Chair Lady, if I could continue, I can answer everything completely without interruptions. Please. Thank you. Can we get an update? Okay, I think I asked that question already. Can we get an update on the backlog payments of the casinos and being on the up-to-date confidentiality protocols with the tax office prevents us from sharing detailed information about backlog payments. The data was acquired, but the data we acquired shows most casino operators met their payment responsibility. The entity that SZV lien was placed on the same entity that got, is it the same entity that got the casino license? No, it is not. SZV lien was placed on the entity Vegas Amusement NV, and the entity that got its casino license is Port de Plaisance Cottages NV. Can we get an update on the backlog payment of the lottery companies being up to date? The information we obtained confirms that there is still a backlog in lottery company payments. The Ministry of TIAT and Finance are actively reviewing and overdue funds to resolve this issue. There ends the questions from MP Hartwell-Arian. Next, I'll go to MP La Cruz's questions. MP La Cruz asked 13 questions, and his line of questioning focused on the oversight of casino operations and the scope of the controller roles, licenses compliance. He also raised concern about the social and labor impact of casinos, including employment, addiction issues, while seeking updates on regulatory frameworks and future planning through the SMAG legislation. First question, has anything been done with the info regarding the casino controllers and the scope of their work? Yes. The role and scope of work of casino controllers has been critically assessed as part of the drafting of the new Games of Chance Ordinance. One of the historical responsibility, monitoring local residents' attendance at the casinos, has not been enforced for decades due to the impracticality of the manual system, particularly with the island's growing population and the limitations of paper-based record-keeping. The draft ordinance introduces a fundamental shift in regulatory philosophy, and these includes moving away from outdated moral policing practices, emphasizing public awareness and education around the risk of gambling, and mandating regular training for casino staff to recognize and address problem gambling. Requiring the availability of professional support services, including counseling for individuals with gambling addiction, and further, the new legal framework integrates technology-driven solutions, including digital tracking system to enable responsible gambling policies, mechanisms to differentiate between anonymous and track play, ensuring both privacy and regulatory compliance. And this transition acknowledges that the traditional scope of the casino controller's role is evolving, and their future responsibilities will be redefined under the SMGA.
It's time for a new brand that is as bold, vibrant, and colorful as the island of St. Martin, with colors drawn from our diversity, cultural heritage, and nature. Our breathtaking beaches, waters, and sun, the majestic brown pelican, our national symbol, the radiant yellow sage, our national flower, the historic border monument signifying the Dutch and French sides, our exciting cruise, yachting, and boating ports, renowned Maho Beach and St. Martin Airport, the hub to the Caribbean. All these parts come together to create the shape of the island of St. Martin. more than a logo. It's a new brand that engages, excites, and will inspire travelers to book. It's time to tell the St. Martin story, to reintroduce travelers to St. Martin, to honor our past, to embrace our present, and shape our future. Our culture and diversity, Dutch and French sides, unrivaled cuisine, twice the nightlife, entertainment, and shopping, cruises, boating, and yachting, twice the adventure, exploration, and relaxation, splendid and scenic accommodations, Pinel, Tentamar, and island hopping in the Caribbean. Whatever your taste, St. Martin has more. Experience twice the Caribbean. St. Martin.
We had our first game of the SSS games, which is the netball game that took part in St. Martin. It was for the primary school. How this came about is that the islands decided, let us have some games between us, and we started to organize the SSS games, and each island has a sport allotted to them based on what they can afford in a sense of facility. So what we sit down between the islands, we sat down and we see what can be done between the islands, and we choose the sport of netball to be here in St. Martin. This is our second year that we are doing the SSS games, and from what you can see, it was a very successful game. Sabre and Stacia played a high quality game. Unfortunately, St. Martin came out third, and Stacia won the overall. Now, in May, we will be going on to Stacia to play volleyball, and then the 25th of May, we will do football and sabre. So each island has their sport that they will be hosting, and St. Martin had the first one, which is netball. Now we know sabre doesn't have a lot of schools, so they more likely took their best that they have. Stacia has very limited school as well, so they selected their girls, and St. Martin had a school tournament, a very successful school tournament, and from that school tournament we had our winners, which was the Mac Jag School, and they played today to represent St. Martin. Here we have the president.
No, actually, my name is Lisa Timothy, the head coach for the Netball St. Martin, and also the coordinator for the school championship that we just ended last week.
Okay, give me an insight exactly what you do with all the different sports that you have.
So what we do with netball, we go into the schools and we do gym sessions, and after our gym sessions, we put them together and have a tournament at the end of our season, which we have 11 schools this season. Mac came out first, as Ms. Brown indicated.
No, the SSS Games are an annual event. So like I mentioned, this is our second year. So of course, next year, we're gonna have a next set of games, but we have to sit down around the table and decide what sport we're gonna have in St. Martin, what sport we're gonna have in Sabre, what sport we're gonna have in Stacia. So it is an annual event, and we hope that it maintain that. And this year, even self, Bonaire, Curacao, and Aruba, we are going down to Bonaire. So they too have an interest because they do it as well amongst themselves. And this year, we will be going down to Bonaire to play in 3-on-3 basketball. So it is growing, and we are very happy to know that it's going to be a Antillian Caribbean, not Caribbean, but the Dutch Caribbean islands are going to eventually make a grand game schedule that we all can have fun together as one Netherlands Antilles.
It's fun. Netball is fun. So I will encourage every island like Bonaire, Curacao, Aruba to take part in this excited sport. And if you need our assistance, St. Martin is always here.
Okay, any final word, Jackie, before we leave?
I must say thank you to Save and Station for coming out. We appreciate their company all the time, and we continue this collaboration with them, that this SSS Games can continue year after year after year. And yes, thank them for coming over and enjoy the stay while they're here.